Mr. Wilburn. Thank you for your time and throughout the last 5 weeks. Uh, as I go down through what you've stipulated, I kind of talk fast and get to the point. Like I may not, meet your 20-minute criteria for it, and you can ding me, but uh, that's just who I am. I like to get to the point and answer all the wickets that you have. But your first wicket on identifying two perceptions about crime or criminality that I've held and have changed as a result of taking this course, I'd have to say that me being a law enforcement officer, I've kind of had held my own opinions and beliefs and values since I started my career in that field. And I think overall that this course has helped reinforce those. Um, and not a whole lot has really changed for me. I think that um, whatever insight that I was able to give through the discussion questions week to week, um, I hope help other people in their end goal of getting a degree or uh, in criminal justice or whatever. And if they pursue a career in law enforcement, I hope I helped them out. But my perceptions really haven't changed as far as what I see on a day-to-day basis and what I've read and what I've studied. In fact, I'd say it's probably reinforced what I do, and given me a stronger background to take to the streets and be a better law enforcement officer. Moving on to number two, my perception of a particular pattern or type of crime has changed. I've pretty much held the same belief that people commit crime either out of convenience or out of necessity, and taking burglary or robbery, for example, while the two are different in nature, robbery being used with force and burglary not with force. I would say that society, that in itself would be a huge misconception to society, not knowing the difference between the two. Um, yeah, pause. I think these misconceptions of crime, and I'm sorry for pausing and bouncing around, but I had to read further into your question. But I think people see that crime committed out of necessity or convenience um, is a little bit of a misconception. I think people who commit crime out of need, whether it's to fuel a drug addiction or to put food on the table. In my own personal experience as a cop, I've seen both those excuses. For example, a gentleman stole baby food and put it in a stroller to take back home to his child, um, while he, you know, stole from a business. His necessity, at least, um, his excuse was to feed his child because his check didn't come in. Would be an excuse. Another one would be an individual steals items so that he can turn around and sell them so he can get money to fuel his drug habit is something I see on a day-to-day basis. Um, I think parts of the course. One of the sub questions is what parts of the course material and scholarly evidence influence your change in perception. Uh, like I stated before, I think that um, me having the knowledge that I do now um, has only reinforced what I do as a police officer, um, and again, helping me do better at my job. Um, yeah, I think I just answered question number 3 as well. Um, as far as my previous ideas, uh, before getting into law enforcement, I really didn't know a whole lot about why people committed crimes. Um, I just thought they did it to do it. They didn't have any other means, or it was how they were raised. Um, if you see your father doing something, you're going to emulate that, or you see your mother doing that, you're probably going to emulate that. I think your home life has a lot to do with how and why people do the things they do nowadays. I think it was week 2 or week 3 that this was brought up, and I thought I answered that pretty well, and that we are products of our home environment, and when I see that on the streets in my job, I often tell people that especially kids, that we have to do better than what our parents did for us, and you know sometimes some kids get it, sometimes those kids don't. The adults, you really can't change their minds; they're set in their ways. But the young ones, they can be influenced, and when they're influenced by the acts of their peers or parents, I think it's incumbent on us as a society to show them what's right and what's wrong. And far too often, the people that I arrest said society has done them wrong, when in fact it's they don't have anybody else to blame but themselves. Um, Moving on to question 4. The structural influence really reinforced the structural theoretical perspective really reinforced um, how my perception on criminology. Um, I think that theoretical perspective in itself is the basis for um, an interaction after a critical theoretical perspective, in that we're, like I stated earlier, we're a product of our society, um, and everything that we do uh, can be explained from where we come from. So I hung on to, even with my last class, sociology. I carried that over with this one because I thought it, for me, um, that's the focal point of how and why people commit crimes. And moving on to the last one, explaining how your changed perception and new knowledge will influence my personal and professional life. This class is I even used it today, talking with some of my friends and coworkers on why people do the things they do, I think it's going to set me up for success as promotionally if I stay with the local police department, or even, if I get the opportunity to go federal. Um, I think once once we as a police force, if we reach out to the communities and engage them and educate them on how and why people commit crimes, I think we can. Get people to change the way they raise their kids, hopefully, and try to deter crime. Um, like one of the weeks, I think it was week 4, last week or week 3, it said something about DNA. I had a real hard time with that one because while it might be scientifically proven, and I'm one for the sciences, um, I think it ultimately comes down to people making their own choices. Uh, you, for example, and not to get too far into it, but um, my mother was sexually abused as a child by her parents, and it took a lot for her to uh, not go down that path, and ultimately she had to make those decisions on her own, and how she raised her children. So I believe, while it may be in the DNA of some, I think if one surrounds themselves in a positive environment, I think that they can change their DNA. They can break that chain of criminal activity, if you will. Um, I'm about 12 and a half minutes in, and I know, like I said, I knew, I'd jump around and hit each question fast. Hopefully I made sense. Um, Hopefully I answered all your questions. And I guess I'll see you tomorrow or in a week or so. But, again, this was a very eye-opening class. But mainly it just reinforced everything that I do as a police officer, and gave me more knowledge and a little extra tools in my toolbox to use on the street to make my job easier, and hopefully inform and educate others. So, Mr. Wolvern, thank you for your feedback, and it was a hell of a 5 weeks, to say, in a good way. I've had a lot of personal issues go on in the last 5 weeks, which I'm not one for excuses, but thank you for bearing with me, and thank you for what you do. It was a good class, and I intend on keeping this criminology book and utilizing it as a source of reference, so I can help educate others. Thank you.